single-family dwelling at the time, and many of them obviously were screaming and running around. They were able to determine that the event that they were looking to investigate, the shooting, was in the basement area. As they entered into the basement area, they were directed by two male adults into the basement rooms. Upon entering into the basement rooms, they found two female victims inside the residence suffering from gunshot wounds. Once the scene was secure and paramedics were able to come in, administer initial first aid, and then both female subjects, one 19 years old, one 29 years old, were transported to Mount Sinai Hospital, where they were, shortly after arriving, pronounced deceased by medical staff at the hospital. After they cleared the basement, the officers evacuated the residence and secured the crime scene. They did that for the protection of everybody in there, and they also luckily had a good Samaritan that was willing to allow them to go into their home. So most of the people that needed shelter were able to be brought into the Good Samaritan's home, which was a neighbor a few doors down. As the investigation continued, we were able to identify a suspect, Rafael Vega, and we were able to determine that he had a relationship with the 19-year-old female victim, Maisha Nubi. Later in the investigation, we became aware of a 10-month-old child who was also in the basement at the time of the shooting. When we became aware of that information, we immediately began efforts to locate the child and check on its condition. We were able to locate the grandmother of the child, and she advised us on scene shortly after that that the child was in good condition and had no injuries. We were able to also determine through body camera footage that both upon the arrival of officers and throughout the investigation, multiple times with contacts with people, we inquired as to whether anyone was injured, other than obviously the two females that we were aware of. We also had additional medical staff on scene that treated an elderly gentleman that was there and some other elderly people that were on scene there. We were concerned about and wanted to make sure that they had adequate medical care. Additionally, after we became aware of this 10-month-old child, our detectives also continued to conduct follow-up interviews. They also had conversation with the grandmother again, and she advised us that the baby was fine and that there was no concern for the baby. Approximately 5:55 this morning, as we continued our investigation of that incident, we were notified of an incident that occurred in a park at 18th Street and 56th Court, and it was an incident involving a man with a gun. Upon officers responding to that location, they discovered a male in the park, apparently deceased from a single gunshot wound to the head. That investigation continues, as is our initial investigation. Preliminarily, the subject in the park does appear to be the subject that we're seeking in relation to the double homicide that occurred earlier yesterday evening. It's not been officially identified, but based on description and other factors that exist, we're fairly confident, very confident, that they indeed are, that he is that subject and that the two events are connected. Today, also, we were notified at 10:30 this morning of a 10-month-old child that had been in the area of our incident last night and is the child of one of the 19-year-old female victim, Nubi. That child was brought into the hospital by the grandmother initially at St. Anthony's, and then sought more advanced treatment at Cove Children's Hospital. We became aware of that, sent detectives to that location, and that child is suffering from an injury that could be consistent with a gunshot wound. It does appear to be that. The baby is stable and being treated at the hospital. What we do know is that we have 3 separate scenes that we're working, 3 separate investigations. From all appearances, they appear to be related, and obviously, our investigation continues as it will throughout the night and the coming days. I'm more than happy to take a couple of quick questions, if any exist. In fact, we did ask that, and the grandmother said the child was playing normally. There were no signs of any injury. She said this morning she noticed a little bit of a scratch, and then she also looked further, and there was a little bit of fluid that she noticed on the abdomen of the baby. Then the baby, in the course of interacting with the grandmother, started to act a little bit differently or uncomfortable, fussy, I think was the word she used. And that's when she brought the child to the hospital, and that's where it progressed from there. Yeah, it does not appear that there was a party there. Whether they all lived there, they were all visiting at that time. Whether they all lived there, that's all part of our investigation and subsequent interviews that we'll do, or have done, or will do in the future. And then also, can you share if it's known if the suspect, Mr. Vega, it was under more protection, from the young lady? Was there an existing one? Sorry, is that? Not that I'm aware of, no. Does not appear to be the case. I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the question? I couldn't hear you. Can you shed light on what may have led to the shooting? The actual events that led up to the shooting are still under investigation. So we don't have those specifics yet, but it is isolated to a domestic. We are confident that it's isolated to a domestic situation. The exact context of that, I'm not at liberty to discuss because we haven't really nailed that down. I sure can. R-A-F-A-E-L is Raphael. Vega, V-E-G-A. 21 years old. We're currently conducting the investigation into those specifics. At this point, it's still under investigation, so I cannot confirm nor deny that. Yeah, of the 14 people, there were children, women, children, and also obviously some males. But there was a mixture, and there were several children. There's no relationship from our investigations at this point. There's no relationship. We are very confident in that. In the other investigation that you're referring to, we've made great progress in that investigation, and can definitively say that they are not connected to one another. Mr. Vega, I'm sorry. He does have some criminal background, yes. I don't want to get into specifics of that. Okay. Thank you.
Once the investigation is finished and they release the information, I'll make sure it gets out to everybody.
Thank you. Absolutely.